Welcome to Dog on a Piano, the podcast where ordinary people give their personal perspective on life. This episode, we explore life's pivotal moments, times where our lives change for the better or for worse. How do we recognise this? How do we cope? Do we learn from our experiences? Does it get any easier as time moves on? How can we navigate these turning points in our own lives with greater awareness and resilience? Have you ever looked back at a specific event, a conversation, or even a seemingly small decision and realised that it fundamentally changed the course of your life? Those junctures, those turning points that can turn us onto new paths, redefine our perspectives, and ultimately shape who we become. Let's hear from our diverse range of guests, individuals from all walks of life, as they bravely share their own pivotal moments. We'll explore the lessons learned and the impact they've had on their journeys.
Being a young black boy in the UK, having the freedom that I had mixed with the wrong people, ended up in situations where I was in a prison cell, ended up in situations where I was in A&E, not because I was injured, but one of my friends was injured, because people would abuse alcohol, drugs, especially weed. I was very stupid and gullible at a very young age to want to fit in and be accepted. So stuck with the wrong crowds. Unfortunately, you are the product of the people you hang around with. Whenever society then looks at you or the group, they don't see you as an individual, they see the group. I became one of those known people to the police for the wrong reasons. It just got to a point where just walking down the street, a police car would drive past and then the car stopped and then they'd come over. I just felt like I was under a magnifying glass consistently and something had to change. So one of the things that changed for me was uni. I needed something to happen. And the only way that I could separate myself from all of this was leaving altogether. I started off with a blank piece of paper, started to make new connections, new friends, and so on. Even then, university has to be one of the worst places to try and turn over a new leaf because, again, there's alcohol abuse and so on. Again, got caught into that as well. One of the main defining moments for me was when we were leaving a pub and we're walking back to the university, being the smooth talker that I thought I was, had a conversation with an extremely attractive young lady. Some of the people in the pub noticed and then they saw me speaking to them and we got chased. We ran, I can't even remember how long we ran for just to get away from them. Unfortunately, they caught up with one of my classmates who they beat up terribly and ended up in A&E. And he actually had a brain hemorrhage. That's how badly they beat him up. We had to call his parents, who then came. And he was just sitting watching all of this unfold. It was like a out-of-body experience. But then the parents as well coming, wanting to know what happened. And as I was retelling the story, that's when I just realized, dude, come on. Choices, decisions, all of this is down to you. If you're big enough to make these stupid decisions, surely you're big enough and wise enough to make the unstupid decisions. So that was the trigger for me to just stop this and change. That was the sort of the final catalyst.
I'd say when I left school and went to uni, because it was such a big decision that's put me in the position that I'm in now and made me the person I am today. And probably the toughest decision I've ever made in my life as well. I'd been at this all-girls grammar school. My direction was carved out for me. So it was kind of college, university, or working. And I didn't know what I wanted to go into. I'd had all of this amazing education and I felt like it would be wasted if I didn't go to uni. The idea that I had in my head was do my A-levels, do really well in that, have a gap year, and then go to uni and then get a job. So that's what I ended up choosing against my better judgment because it's something that I knew I wouldn't enjoy. I thought it was expected of me and I went regardless. I think I thought my future was set. COVID completely took all of my plans out of my control. I was in year 12, so I was 16, 17 when it happened. And I remember I was on a school trip and it was horrendous. We were all falling sick. Everyone was scared because we'd seen it on the news, this massive illness taking people's lives, young people, fit people, healthy people. Everyone was throwing up. We had to quarantine. And by the time we got back from our school trip, all of the schools had shut and everyone wasn't allowed to leave their houses. I think at that moment I was like, this is completely changed. I'm just going to have to relax and see where this takes me. There's nothing I can do to change it, which was really hard. And obviously we didn't know it was going to go on for as long as it did, because it went on for 2 years. So my whole A-levels, it meant I couldn't go traveling after I finished school. That was something really hard to come to terms with, honestly. Being independent that early on, I felt like I wasn't ready for it. I needed to almost be disciplined and forced to work at that age in school, and that was completely taken away from me. Like, I had to do it at home. And my parents had just got divorced, so we were in a smaller house. Everything was very stressful. Didn't really have our own space to do our work. I have a younger sister who was also going through GCSEs at the time. So yeah, it was really hard to be able to balance all of that, honestly.
I had my path planned out fairly early in my life. My parents, again, very much influenced me in this. I sat down and said, I'm good at maths. And my mum said, well, you should be an accountant then. That very much pushed me in a direction. I went off to university and I did not do very well. I picked a subject which mainly my mum pushed me towards, a subject that I probably shouldn't have done. I did maths and statistics. I'd always done okay to good without putting in a huge amount of effort. I'd always breezed through exams. And for the first time in my life, I really failed. I failed at something. I flat out failed. So that made a big change in my life. That really changed the direction. I was expecting to go to university and come away with a degree and to be successful. You should go to university because successful people go to university. You're always sold this lie that you'll go to university and step out into a great job and you'll be earning thousands and thousands of pounds on day one. And I didn't. I was utterly devastated, but I totally knew that it was my own fault. I knew that I was not committed to doing what I had gone to university for. I accepted that pressure to go and do that course. Looking back at it now, I was very much pushed in a direction. I probably should never have even gone to university.
What made me go to South Africa is my nan died. That was the first person close to me that I have ever lost to death. And that moment made me realize that life is too short and you can't plan for this future. You don't know what to expect. I went for 2 weeks. Initially, I had no plans for how long for, but the longer I stayed out there, the more I enjoyed it. And then I decided to go and move out there. Prior to going to South Africa, I was a very town person. I didn't drive anywhere. I never explored really beyond my bubble. I was in a relationship. We had goals and spoke about at a very young age that we were going to buy a house, settle down, and that was our future. Nothing ambitious. I had money that I was trying to save at the time to move into a property that I always called my runaway money. So if anything ever happened, I could come back easily. It was purely self-destruct. Let's go. Give this a go. If it doesn't work out, I can come back. What's the worst that could happen?
Change was very much part of my world. I always was restless. I always knew there was something else. I didn't want to put into the box of this is how you behave. But I decided I just couldn't take the marriage anymore. And I'd known for a long time. I thought, oh, I'd done this for children. And this is me talking to myself at this time. But I was so unwell a lot of the time. I just wasn't functioning because I wasn't in a good place. The pivotal moment was getting divorced and actually sticking to it. Because before, when I'd made choices, I was often persuaded out of them. I'm going to go through with it. And it wasn't particularly easy. I'd been this sort of, what I had tried to create, this amazing, perfect, ridiculous life that wasn't real, if you like, and tried to be someone I really wasn't because I was trying to fit into the world that was the right world to be in. I was choosing to do something fun for me that was actually going to be another step. I took myself to a college in Oxford, and I wouldn't have dared do that because of the people who say, "Oh, what are you doing that for?" I listened to what people say and they'd talk you out of it. So suddenly I was being me, having more of me. I had just got divorced. It wasn't that long. It was kind of survival. I was pretty irrational. I think also I was looking for something completely different. I laugh at that because I think it was like being unleashed. That then led to me taking this job in London, doing the then Prince of Wales away days. So I was doing records around London and pretty high-end stuff. But somehow you do things and you don't always know, but your knowing is telling you there's something there, and you can either talk yourself out or not. Action creates awareness, which enables you to make choices and opens up possibilities so you can make choices. And I think that's probably what happened there. And I've got choices, and I can either choose to act on them, do something to change something, or I can just sit and moan about it.
We moved back to the UK in 2015, which is 10 years ago now. It was end of spring, early summer. I was leaving a very good, high-paying job. We were in an apartment in a place called Clarksville, Tennessee. At the time, just had the 2 babies. We get on a cruise boat on Norwegian Cruise Line, and we packed our entire house contents into about 6 or 8 bags and suitcases, and we moved over here. We had nothing except for the clothes on our back and the clothes in these suitcases. So we didn't have much. And so we're in the UK living with my parents, and oh dear, I've just left America. Sunny, beautiful weather, beautiful scenery, and man alive, it hit me hard. Like, oh my goodness, what to make of that? It was massively impactful, and it did a number on me. I don't know how to describe it. There's a lot of emotion about coming home, but also a lot of emotion about leaving the US, coming home to my family home, but also coming back to the UK with no money, no job, and almost starting over. And I found that particularly challenging.
My life has been a series of pivotal moments. The first probably major moment was that I wanted to be a journalist, and I went to college with that in mind, and I was like very much set. For the first time in my life, I really found my people, and I was part of this group, and it was amazing. I started finding lots of distractions, and I met a boy, and I fell in love, and at some point I lost my way. My philosophy teacher said to me at the end of the year, "I don't know what happened to you, but you're a very different person now to the person who like first walked in our classroom." I think that a lot had happened in my life up until that point. It was my year to let off steam and have lots of fun and do a little bit of finding myself, but none of that was conducive to actually studying and working. So I dropped out of college when I was 17. I decided that I was going to get a job, and my parents were not thrilled, my mum particularly. My dad was not as worried because I think he thought about things differently. But I got a job eventually working for my dad. He was the manager of a textiles factory, and I went to work in the office. And within 3 months, I had made that job as efficient as it was ever going to be. And I could do everything that was required of me in about 2 hours. And the other 6 hours, I was bored out of my mind, and I just ate and got fat. That's where I learned that I could not do this for the rest of my life, because I was probably going to end up killing myself at a very young age. So I decided that admin was now what I was going to do, and this was my destiny. So I thought, what's the most interesting thing you could do administration for? I decided it was either law or medicine, and I flipped a coin, and it landed on law. So for the next 2 years, I wrote to all of the law firms trying to persuade them to give me a job.
And eventually I got a job as a receptionist because I happened to be walking past a solicitor's firm in the town on my way home. I needed a way out, I think. I didn't actually have such grand plans. All I wanted to do was either be a secretary for a doctor or a secretary for a lawyer. And I could never have seen all of the rest that was to come. I could have settled, although I couldn't have, because ultimately I didn't. And I just kept getting bored and studying and asking for promotions until I stopped being bored.
So that was the trigger for me to just stop this and change. That was the sort of the final catalyst, the decision my dad made for me. He wanted me to do a specific course, a specific qualification. He wanted me to get into farming because that's what he loves. That's not me. I wanted to get into engineering. So I decided I was going to do that. But the trade-off with my dad was, if you get into engineering, you're going to pay for it yourself. So I did. I worked and went to uni at the same time. Tough, but I did it. Spoke to the head of school, who allowed me to continue, but also make monthly payments as opposed to the lump sum that they expect you to make at university. So that was extremely helpful. So qualified and couldn't get a job because I did not have a work experience. All the construction companies or all the civil engineering companies I approached viewed me as overqualified because I was looking for entry-level jobs. I couldn't go in as a graduate because I didn't have the experience that I expected. I was a traffic warden for a week, hated it. It was either that or I go and steal purses. So did that for a week, hated it. I just realized that wasn't me. I left that and I was a postman, did the round. It was a contracting job for about 6 months, hated it as well. Again, just did not feel like it was me. Drove buses for a while. Again, just wanted to do something to earn money, but to keep myself out of trouble. The job was still, the dream was still civil engineering, but couldn't find it. Left buses because I realized I didn't like working with the public. My journey professionally, I look back and think, how the hell did that happen? I started off my banking career and I did not feel like I had enough support and there was scope for me to grow. My regional sales director said to me, go, do what you think you need to do. He pointed me in the right direction and was extremely honest, brutally honest with me as well on some things that I needed to just take on board. And that's when he said to me, now is the time for you to leave. Loyalty does not get you anywhere. You need to put yourself first and you need to look after number one. I was then offered an opportunity to move to Luxembourg and help a fintech company that wanted to set up. When that opportunity came, the truth is I didn't have a clue what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. One of the things he said to me was, you never turn down opportunities. You accept it, you say yes, and then you figure it out. So 7 years later, here I am. I've set up 3 fintech companies. Ever since I came to Luxembourg, I've never had to apply for a job. I have been approached at each and every turn.
I definitely struggle with change, which I hate to admit because I really want to be able to embrace it. And I think I've put myself in positions throughout my life where I have to go through change because I know it's something that I don't like. Everyone likes to feel comfortable, and people who say they don't, I think there's an element of a lies in that. They probably, a bit like me, wish that they didn't feel like so happy in their comfort zone. Understandably, everyone's going to feel better when you have control and you know where you are and your surroundings. Going through a change is so stressful because it's out of your control. You don't know how it's going to happen. I always have very high expectations of what's going to happen, and then it always falls short and I get disappointed. So it's something that I've worked on throughout my life, and I've forced a lot of change as well, which has made me more comfortable. And I find it that I'm quicker to adapt to it now. When I went to uni, I was there for 3 years. Within the first 2 months, I completely doubted what I was doing. I wanted to give up. I remember phoning my parents. I was crying almost every day, having massive regrets. Everyone else was having the best time of their lives, was so happy with their decision, doing well in their grades, making lots of new friends, loving the place that they were living in. I hated everything about uni, every single aspect. I'm like loyal to my core, like loyal with the friends I make, loyal with my relationships, loyal with my decisions. And so this decision I was going to be loyal to. I wasn't going to give up because I'd made it, and I was just going to deal with the consequences, which I don't know if that's a good thing, because I think it's brave to be able to follow what you know is right and maybe quit. But I persevered and now I've got a degree. However, it was really challenging and it put me through a lot, probably like the worst mental years of my life. However, I feel stronger because of it. And like I said, no one's going to be able to take the degree away from me. I always feel like I know massive monumental things going to happen in my life when nothing's going right. I feel like that kind of suggests to you that whether you like it or not, there's going to be a big change. So I've moved to Canada this year, and the summer before I left was hectic. There was chaos everywhere I went. It was following me. I feel when people speak of negative spirals and positive spirals, that was happening in real life. It wasn't just, it was like a tangible thing that was happening. Like we got in a car accident, we had health issues, money issues. There was a lot going on. And I just felt like every incident led into another. And at that point, I was like, I know that this change needs to come now, because the life that I'm living now is just not sustainable. And I think when you feel like that, rather than feeling overwhelmed and out of control, it's okay if you feel like that, but just recognizing it. What I like to do so that I don't get overwhelmed is sit with the thoughts, not try and distract myself by, some people like to take substances like smoking or alcohol, drugs even. I think it's just good to be able to sit with it, be uncomfortable with it. However, in your mind, if you imagine something, like I always imagine I'm sat on the side of a road and that the car's passing me, all my emotions and all of the events that have happened. And I'm just the observer. My emotions don't define me. They're just something that's a part of me. So I can observe them, acknowledge them, allow space for them, but it doesn't have to consume me. And I think my advice to someone who's going through a similar thing, like a pivotal moment, would be maybe think of a similar technique for you that helps, where you can be the observer and not let your emotions consume you completely, so that you can think rationally and you do have the energy to move past it as well.
There's been lots of times in my life where I've thought, I need to do something, some of which I've listened to and some of which I've ignored. There are certain times where, although there is a choice, the choice is not really a choice. Like, I looked at it and I was like, I'm going to be stuck at home with my parents for so long. I was, 25 when I moved up north? And I just looked at it and thought, if I work my arse off, in 10 years, I might be able to move out from home. Am I willing to put that amount of effort in to do that? Or I could move up north and I could do it in 6 months. And to me, that then became a really obvious decision. I had to weigh it up and say, what are the benefits? What are the pluses and minuses? And don't get me wrong, moving away, leaving my friends and family behind is hard. I did move up north and I moved away from home. Cost of living, the south of England is just too damn expensive. It's so much cheaper up north, so much cheaper. I could afford to buy a house. I could afford to move out. I could afford to live on my own. From then, I became quite driven for a long time. But if I hadn't have done that, then there wouldn't have been any development. And I could see that I was stuck. There was nothing that was going to change unless I made a change. Luck favors the brave. If you're willing to actually take a chance and do something, you're more likely to succeed than someone who doesn't take the chance. If you're not willing to buy a ticket, you're not going to win the lottery.
I don't cope very well with change. I never have. I was in South Africa for 6 years, and the first 3 years I struggled. Being out there and not being alone, being in a relationship with someone, I did have the support network, and I changed job positions in South Africa. The company that I moved to were amazing. They really took me and my views and what I got to see in Johannesburg to the next level. And I found it interesting and fascinating, and that kept me there as well. When you go into a life-changing situation, the best thing to do is not get too complacent and go back to your old ways. I think a lot of people try and recreate the life that they were living just in a different environment, but the issues that you might have had will just become into the new environment. I do believe right place at the right time. I do believe that your path you go on is based on your choices, nobody else's. So you create your own path. Embracing your change and the new environment that you've moved to is probably the best way to look at it. Also, not be too negative and too hard on yourself. You can bring yourself down, whereas you have to make positive choices.
What is it about this situation that I love? Because when you ask that question and you're in a pile of shit and it's being poured over you, what do you love about it? That sounds really very simplistic. I can tell you that even when I change something, and I still do make similar mistakes, but I'm much more aware of them and they're far less. But I am where I am because of the choices I've made. And some of those choices weren't choices that I actually would choose to make. We have this convoluted way of not actually facing, this is reality. Jump or don't jump. Oh, I can't do that, I'm too tired. Oh, I can't do that, I haven't got money. That's just an excuse. How many excuses do we make not to take action? Is business your life or life your business? How much is it yours? Why should anybody else do anything for you? And we're brilliant at making excuses to stop ourselves doing something that could create something greater. And if it doesn't, whatever we create opened up another avenue of something. That's why I say often there's no right or wrong. And what if the wrongness is the strongness? We haven't actually seen it.
As far as change to myself, I find change very uncomfortable. I like change for the better. So when things are improving, I'm comfortable with change that makes things better. When I feel like things are changing but getting worse, then I'm not very good at it. I despise it, actually. Maybe you just embrace opportunities that are given to you in a way that means that when you reflect back on them in the future, you walk through that change with appreciation. So maybe just taking on those experiences, owning them as you're walking through them, you may find that they are turning points. I would urge people to find the place you fit. What is it that you are called to do? What is it that you are supposed to do? Don't chase the money, although money is important. Don't chase the prestige of some form of role, but chase the thing that you were designed to do and do it with all your might.
I think it's fairly unusual to get to the age of 31 and never having actually left the town or the place where you grew up. And I was fully immersed in Cornish life and I never pictured myself moving away. The reason I moved away was because my boyfriend, who had supported me through the last pretty much 4 years of studying, got offered his dream job. He had been hugely supportive and instrumental in me getting to the final 4 years of my studying, which was to cross-qualify from legal executive to solicitor. I said, go for it and let's see what happens. And in my life, whenever anything like this is meant to happen, everything just falls into place. So we had loads of stressful conversations about how we're going to find 2 jobs and sell a flat and buy another flat, and how is all of that going to happen at once? And it's massively terrifying and it just seems impossible. And you do need all of those things because we live in the real world and we need 2 salaries and all the rest of it. Just said, okay, I'll start talking to a recruitment consultant and see what's around. And within a relatively short period of time, I find myself being offered an interview and I get offered the job there and then, at which point my boyfriend at the time hadn't even had his interview because it was a much slower process for him. And so suddenly the stress was, oh, okay, I've got a job, will he get his? And everything just ran away with us. And I was the person who was driving over the Cornwall-Devon border, crying, thinking, what on earth have I done? However many lockdowns, a pandemic later, we ultimately did not survive all of the huge amount of change that happened very quickly in our lives. And I think everybody, all of my family certainly just assumed that I was going to come home now. And they were very pleased at that prospect, I suspect, but didn't let on. And when I said, actually, no, I'm going to stay, I'm making a real go of my career. And there was opportunity in a way that I had never experienced it in Cornwall. So I decided to stay. I was in the right place at the right time, and the opportunities just came up. And it's not luck, it's what you make of circumstances, essentially. I think at the biggest pivotal moments in my life, the decision's been much easier to make, or it has felt like the decision has already been made. And I think it's only with the benefit of hindsight when we look back that we can see where all of these sort of forks in the road happened. And that was the moment where everything changed. Maybe you should just let things evolve. I think life gave me a second chance in a different form.
You know, it's easy to look at someone else and think they have it all mapped out. But listening to our contributors, these pivotal moments are a part of life. The moments that you look back and realise that's when everything changed. Every moment is a golden one for those who have the vision to see it as such. Perhaps we need them to shape us, force us down the harder path less trodden. Now, for sure, pivotal moments will happen to all of us at some point. I guess how we handle them is what makes the difference. So, whatever you're going through right now, try to remember there's always another side, and that other side could be the start of your next great chapter. It's never too late to be what you might have been. It's never too late to be all that you can be. This podcast was created in a shed at the end of a garden and could be just one of my own pivotal moments. Until next time, thanks for listening to Dog on a Piano. Please like and subscribe to be notified of upcoming episodes.